Welcome to the Folkkeeper's Hearth, where timeless tales and ancient lore come alive. Gather round as we explore the myths, legends, and fables that have been passed down through the generations, keeping us connected to our ancestors and the old ways. Do you have your cup of tea? Have you pulled up a chair? It is time. Let us begin. Welcome back to the Heroes of Asgard. In our last chapter, we followed Odin on his daring quest for Othrir, the sacred mead of wisdom and poetry. Now our tale continues with Chapter 2, a new turning in the mythic road. Join me as we follow the footsteps of gods and giants through 4 unfolding parts of ancient lore. We begin with Chapter 2, How Thor Went to Jötunheim, Part 1a of From Asgard to Utgard. Once on a time, Thor, that is Thor of the Aesir, and Loki set out on a journey from Asgard to Jötunheim. They traveled in Thor's chariot, drawn by 2 milk-white goats. It was a somewhat cumbrous iron chariot, and the wheels made a rumbling noise as it moved, which sometimes startled the ladies of Asgard and made them tremble. But Thor liked it, thought the noise sweeter than any music, and was never so happy as when he was journeying in it from one place to another. They traveled all day, and in the evening they came to a countryman's house. It was a poor, lonely place, but Thor descended from his chariot and determined to pass the night there. The countryman, however, had no food in his house to give these travelers, and Thor, who liked to feast himself and make everyone feast with him, was obliged to kill his own 2 goats and serve them up for supper. He invited the countryman and his wife and children to sup with him. But before they began to eat, he made one request of them. "Do not, on any account," he said, "break or throw away any of the bones of the goats you are going to eat for supper." "I wonder why," said the peasant's son Thialfi to his sister Roska. Roska could not think of any reason. And by, Thialfi happened to have a very nice little bone given him with some marrow in it. "Certainly there can be no harm in my breaking just this one," he said to himself. "It would be such a pity to lose the marrow." And as Thor's head was turned another way, he slyly broke the bone in 2, sucked the marrow, and then threw the pieces into the goats' skins where Thor had desired that all the bones might be placed. I do not know whether Thialfi was uneasy during the night about what he had done, but in the morning he found out the reason of Thor's command, and from that day onward he never again questioned the will of the gods without care, for he had witnessed their power first-hand. As soon as Thor rose in the morning, he took his hammer Mjolnir in his hand and held it over the goat skins as they lay on the floor, whispering runes the while. They were dead skins with dry bones on them when he began to speak. But as he said the last word, Thialfi, who was looking curiously on, saw 2 live goats spring up and walk towards the chariot, as fresh and well as when they brought the chariot up to the door, Thialfi hoped. But no, one of the goats limped a little with his hind leg, and Thor saw it. His brow grew dark as he looked, and for a minute Thialfi thought he would run far, far into the forest and never come back again. But one look more at Thor's face, angry as it was, made him change his mind. he thought of a better thing to do than running away. He came forward, threw himself at the Assa's feet, and, confessing what he had done, begged pardon for his disobedience. Thor listened, and the displeased look passed away from his face. "You have done wrong, Thialfi," he said, raising him up. "But as you have confessed your faults so bravely, instead of punishing you, I will take you with me on my journey and show you what it means to walk in honor before the Aesir." Roska chose to go with her brother, and from that day Thor had 2 faithful servants who followed him wherever he went. The chariot and goats were now left behind, but with Loki and his 2 new followers, Thor journeyed on to the end of Mannheim, that is Midgard, over the sea, and then on in the strange, barren, misty land of Jötunheim. Sometimes they crossed great mountains. Sometimes they had to make their way among torn and rugged rocks, which often, through the mist, appeared to them to wear the forms of men. And once for a whole day they traversed a thick and tangled forest. In the evening of that day, being very much tired, they saw with pleasure that they had come upon a spacious hall, of which the door, as broad as the house itself, stood wide open. "Here we may very comfortably lodge for the night," said Thor, and they went in and looked about them. The house appeared to be perfectly empty. There was a wide hall and 5 smaller rooms opening into it. They were, however, too tired to examine it carefully, and as no inhabitants made their appearance, they ate their supper in the hall and lay down to sleep. But they had not rested long before they were disturbed by strange noises, groanings, mutterings, and snortings, louder than any animal that they had ever seen in their lives could make. By and by the house began to shake from side to side, and it seemed as if the very earth trembled. Thor sprang up in haste and ran to the open door, but though he looked earnestly into the starlit forest, there was no enemy to be seen anywhere. Loki and Thialfi, after groping about for a time, found a sheltered chamber to the right, where they thought they could finish their night's rest in safety. But Thor, with Mjolnir in his hand, watched at the door of the house all night. As soon as the day dawned, he went out into the forest, and there, stretched on the ground close by the house, he saw a strange, uncouth, gigantic shape of a man, out of whose nostrils came a breath which swayed the trees to their very tops. There was no need to wonder any longer what the disturbing noises had been. Thor fearlessly walked up to this strange monster to have a better look at him. But at the sound of his footsteps, the giant shape rose slowly, stood up an immense height, and looked down upon Thor with 2 great misty eyes, like blue mountain lakes. "Who are you?" said Thor, standing on tiptoe, stretching his neck to look up. "And why do you make such a noise as to prevent your neighbors from sleeping?" "My name is Skrymir," said the giant sternly. "I need not ask yours. You are the little Asa Thor of Asgard. But pray now, what have you done with my glove?" As he spoke, he stooped down and picked up the hall where Thor and his companions had passed the night, and which in truth was nothing more than his glove, the room where Loki and Thialfi had slept being the thumb. Thor rubbed his eyes and felt as if he must be dreaming. Rousing himself, however, he raised Mjolnir in his hand, and trying to keep his eyes fixed on the giant's face, which seemed to be always changing, he said, "It is time that you should know, Skrymir, that I am come to Jötunheim to fight and conquer such evil giants as you are, and little as you think me, I am ready to try my strength against yours." "Try it, then," said the giant. And Thor, without another word, threw Mjolnir at his head. "Ah! Ah!" said the giant. "Did a leaf touch me?" Again Thor seized Mjolnir, which always returned to his hand however far he cast it from him, and threw it with all his force. The giant put up his hand to his forehead. "I think," he said, "that an acorn must have fallen on my head." A third time Thor struck a blow, the heaviest that ever fell from the hand of an Asa. But this time the giant laughed out loud. "There's surely a bird on that tree," he said, "who has let a feather fall on my face." Then, without taking any further notice of Thor, he swung an immense wallet over his shoulder, and, turning his back upon him, struck into a path that led from the forest. When he had gone a little way, he looked round, his immense face appearing less like a human countenance than some strange, uncouthly shaped stone toppling on a mountain precipice. "Ving Thor," he said, "let me give you a piece of good advice before I go. When you get to Utgard, don't make much of yourself. You think me a tall man, but you have taller still to see, and you yourself are a very little mannikin. Turn back home whence you came, and be satisfied to have learned something of yourself by your journey to Jötunheim." "Mannikin or not, that will I never do," shouted Asa Thor after the giant. "We will meet again, and something more we will learn, or teach each other."
Thank you for joining me for this Northern tale, based on the retellings found in the Heroes of Asgard by Annie and Eliza Keary, a public domain work first published in the 19th century. This is just the beginning of our journey through the old tales of the Aesir. We'll return to their stories in future episodes, weaving them in among other myths and legends from across the folk traditions of Northern Europe. Until next time, may the old ways guide you, and may the voices of our ancestors never fade.